Jim Starkovich, how are you doing?
I'm doing fine today, Jim. How are you?
Thrilled to death to meet you, at least over the screen and over headsets, so we can talk to each other. We've communicated via Facebook, but that's about it. Jim,
Yes.
Jim is one of 27 of us, women and men, who have walked or run across the country, who consolidated, collaborated, and each wrote a chapter about their journeys across America. In Jim's chapter I read last night, it's a phenomenal chapter. I'm not going to give it away, but I am going to ask you a few questions about it, Jim, and about your journey. I like to
Okay.
start with why in the world would you decide? Why did you decide? How did you come up with the decision to run across America?
Well, I got started in running back when I was about 30 years of age. And it seemed like once I get into running, I really liked it. And I continued trying to accomplish greater things in running. So I ran a marathon. Then from that, a buddy of mine and I decided let's do something big. So we ran across the state of Florida. That was a big deal. And I had my wife with me, Joe, and Joe drove our van. And it was a 3-day jaunt across the state of Florida. So after that was done, I decided, well, I've heard about people running the Grand Canyon. Let's go try that. So we packed up the van. I got my wife to agree to do this. We drove to the North Rim and I ran the Kaibab Trail down into the canyon and back up the other side where she met me. The funny part about this is that it took her just about the same amount of time to drive from the north back around the canyon to the south side to meet me.
Wow.
It was about a 6-hour drive and about a 6-hour jaunt for me.
How many miles was that, John,
It's
for you?
approximately 21.3, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
But my problem was I didn't take enough water with me. And it was July. I was by myself, which was okay. I didn't mind doing that. But I ran out of water. I was
Wow.
going to get water down at the bottom at Phantom Ranch. They have, if you're familiar, there's Phantom Ranch down at the bottom. And I was going to come down, use my water up, fill up at Phantom Ranch and finish out the run. Well, Phantom Ranch was closed and I didn't want to wait for them to open. So I took off heading back up to the south side of the Grand Canyon. And fortunately, there were day hikers coming down, and I was able to bum water from them. So it turned out to be successful.
So how long after
And,
that, or did you have some other epic runs after that before you decided to run across America?
I don't know, it's kind of hard to say. Um, I had heard about running. I had heard about running across America, but I never really put it in my mind that I wanted to do it until after I retired and didn't have anything to do. So I convinced my wife to crank up the van again and let's go cross country. So she agreed and she supported me. Uh, I couldn't have done it without her. I mean, she did all the dirty work. The running part was easy. It was all of, find a motel, find a place to eat, where are we going to stop for the night, those sorts of things that we had to make decisions about.
And what year was it that you ran? And give us an
I
idea.
ran in 1994.
Your
Been
starting
20 some
point, your
years.
starting point, your finish point. How did you select those, Jim?
What's that? How, the what?
Your starting point and your finish point.
Oh, my wife and I pulled a map out of the U.S. and we looked at it and I said, well, I want to run across the country, but let's do it in the shortest period of time. So let's find out where in the U.S. we can find the shortest distance and still go from sea to sea.
Yep.
Well, it turned out that if I started in Fernandina Beach, Florida, and stayed south in the United States, that I could come out around San Diego, and that would be about the shortest route across the country. So
So
those were our decision points. Plus,
give,
there were no mountains, and I didn't want to do
yep,
mountains.
give us an idea what like how many miles your average day was and what your long day was on the journey.
Well, my average day was about 31 miles, approximately. It depended where we could park the van, and my wife would go ahead 6 miles and wait for me, and she wasn't always able to find a place at 6 miles, so she might have to go 7, 8. So it varied a little bit on each day, uh, but it worked okay, and the 31 miles was okay. I never got injured, so that worked out in the end to be about the right mileage for me, an old guy like me at the time. The other disadvantage, I would say the only disadvantage is that we didn't have any communication. There were no cell phones back then. So we had an agreement. The agreement was that if we get lost or we get separated, that we would go back, both of us would go back to the last point that we saw each other. So that's what we did. And I got lost twice in Dallas. So I had to, after you run for a while, you kind of get a feel for what 6 miles is, and you're going beyond 6 miles. Then you're lost. So I would go back, she would go back, and we'd get our wires hooked together again and continue on.
I saw that in your chapter. You include a lot in your chapter, and that was a great thing to do, a great idea to come up with, because people that were born after, let's say, probably 1980 or 85, they don't have a clue what it's like to live without technology. I ran across in '02, and I had the early part of technology, so we did have cell phones. But I
Yeah.
can't imagine doing it when you did it with absolutely, no communication whatsoever.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So
what would you
what year
say?
did you run it?
I
What
ran
year did
across
you?
in 2002.
Oh, okay. Okay.
2002, yes, sir. So
The one of the pluses of doing all of this, and it's serendipity, it's not something I was looking for, but it happened. Um, I was able, after I ran, I decided I wanted to be a tour guide. And I was retired now. I did my thing with running. So I went to a tour director school in San Francisco, learned how to be a tour guide, and started looking for a job. And I got a job with a company called Marathon Tours. And Marathon Tours is well known in the marathon community because they run tours all over the world. So you want to go run a marathon in Israel, you want to run one in Cuba, you want to run one in Santiago, Chile, they take care of all the arrangements. And they have a guide usually that goes along with you. And that was me, to
oh,
make sure no one got lost. It was a
what a
great job.
phenomenal part
Oh, yeah.
retirement job, and you were the perfect
Yeah,
person for it.
it was. So I traveled all over the world
Yeah.
on their dime
So back to
and got to.
your trip, Jim. There's highlights and there's low lights, I guess you call them low points. What would you say was your favorite day or your favorite state, favorite part of your run,
Uh,
and the low point?
Uh, my favorite, the highlight that I remember is coming out of Louisiana into West Texas. And it was that time of the year that the bluebells flowers were blooming. And there were bluebells in filling the medians on the sides of the road. It was just beautiful. It was perfect running. That was the best day. Another best day was dropping down out of Cloudcroft, New Mexico. You drop down this steep hill down to Alamogordo, which is right next to the White Sands. That was another good day. Bad day was we were being hit by tornadoes. I mean, we had the radio, so we had a pretty good feel of what weather was going to be like, and we had TV too. But the day that the tornadoes were coming through, I thought, man, I don't want to get hit by a tornado out there all by myself, you know? So if I saw something that looked kind of weird, I'd duck down into a culvert and wait for a while. So I didn't get many miles done that day.
Well, I tell you what, your chapter is very interesting, and people are going to really enjoy it. I'm going to pull that back up here again really quick. And
Okay.
the final question I like to ask people is, the book comes out this week, actually, sometime before March 15th on Amazon for it'll be available. The book is called Across America on Foot. Jim has the chapter, 26 other ones do. But I'm sure a lot of people, especially after reading the book, are going to think, well, that's something I might want to do. And of course, we all had our cautions and our reservations. But for somebody who has thought about it or who is thinking about it, what advice would you give them if they're thinking about walking or running across America?
I would say that it's somewhat dangerous because it's you against the traffic. So you want to dress in neon clothing. You want to try to make sure as much as you can that traffic sees you, because there were many situations where as I'd be running, I'd kind of not doze off, but go into a trance where I'm not paying too much attention. I'm just plodding along. And all of a sudden there would be a brown car go right by me. And I hadn't even seen that car because it had blended in with the background. So that's what I would recommend.
And
You want to be very careful.
I'll,
As
se-
far as
I'll second that, Jim, only because, and then I'm going to let you finish. But I was out in Texas, and I was talking to no, I'm sorry, it was Illinois, and it was on a 2-lane road, and I was running facing traffic like we always do. You should face traffic. And so I wasn't worried about traffic behind me because I was on the left side. And I was talking on the phone to my sister, and a car passed from the back and passed, another car. And its mirror actually hit my shirt.
wow.
And I was not paying attention. And, back even in 2002, when I did it, in the 1990s, when you did it, I did have cell phones, but there was no texting and driving. And now for these men and women who are crossing, it's so much more dangerous because so many people are out there texting and on their phones. So anyway,
Yeah.
I cut you off. What were you going to say? Some other
Yeah.
advice?
Yeah. But the running, to me, you want to be well trained also. You want to be able to go out there and do 30, 40, 50, whatever it is you want to do per day. Unless you want to walk, of course, walking is a lot easier. It just takes longer.
Yep. Well, we
So,
can't thank you enough for participating in the book. We're all excited. Your chapter is phenomenal. Jim's
I'm
one of the,
excited.
yep,
I'm excited too.
you're one of the early chapters because we arranged it chronologically from the very first crosser who participated in the book on up. So you're early on, and everybody's going to love your chapter. Jim, thanks so much for participating.
Okay. Well, thank you for all the work you're doing also. Appreciate it.
I look forward to
Have a
meeting
good
you
one.
in person.
Okay.